The LED lights in President Whitmore's office cast that harsh, sterile glow that makes everyone look slightly deceased as I sat across from his imposing desk, watching him practice what I can only describe as concerned administrator face, that peculiar expression administrators wear when they're about to destroy your life while maintaining plausible deniability about their soul. Catherine, he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd rehearsed this speech in the mirror, as you know, we're facing some budgetary constraints. I knew. Everyone knew. The university had been hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured water balloon, thanks to a series of brilliant decisions that included renovating the president's office while cutting library hours and hiring 3 new associate deans whose job descriptions read like abstract poetry. We've had to make some difficult decisions, Whitmore continued, adjusting his tie, a silk noose that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The man had the emotional range of elevator music and the strategic thinking of a goldfish with amnesia. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap like a well-behaved student, while my brain catalogued every detail of this moment. The way he couldn't quite meet my eyes. The stack of termination papers already prepared on his desk, corners aligned with military precision. The coffee ring staining his leather desk pad that his assistant would probably blame on facilities management. Your position in grant development is being eliminated, effective immediately. The words landed like a brick through stained glass. 5 years of work. 5 years of turning this university's grant proposals from literary disasters into funding magnets. 5 years of writing applications so compelling they could make a tax auditor weep with joy. And now I was budgetary fat to be trimmed. The severance package is quite generous, he added, sliding a folder across the desk with the enthusiasm of someone handing over a funeral program. 2 weeks' pay and continued health insurance through the end of the month. Generous. Like calling a paper cut a flesh wound. I reached for the folder, my fingers steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I see. And my current projects? We'll redistribute them among existing staff. He delivered this line with the confidence of a man who believed photosynthesis was a type of camera. Existing staff. The same existing staff who thought a bibliography was a fear of books and who had once submitted a grant proposal with to be completed still in the template fields. All of them? I asked, my voice level as a frozen lake. All of them. Including the big one. The application I'd been crafting for 3 months like a master watchmaker assembling a timepiece. The Whitmore Foundation grant, ironically named after our president's grandfather, though Whitmore seemed blissfully unaware of this cosmic joke. $12 million over 4 years. The kind of money that could fund entire departments, hire faculty, and maybe even fix the heating system that made half the campus feel like a Siberian research station. The application sat in my computer, 98% complete, waiting only for final review and my digital signature as the university's credentialed grant writer. Without me, they had about as much chance of submitting a successful application as a chocolate teapot had of surviving a bonfire. But Whitmore didn't know that. In his mind, grants materialized through the sheer force of institutional wanting, like academic fairy dust sprinkled by the budget committee. I stood up, smoothing my skirt with the careful precision of someone defusing a bomb. Well then. I suppose that's everything. Catherine, he said, and for a moment I thought I detected something resembling humanity in his voice. You understand this isn't personal. It's just business. Ah yes. The corporate equivalent of it's not you, it's me delivered with all the sincerity of a politician's campaign promise. I smiled, the kind of smile museum guards wear when they're watching someone get too close to a priceless painting. Of course. President Whitmore. Business. 20 minutes later, I was in the parking lot, my office belongings in a cardboard box that had previously held copy paper. 5 years reduced to a box of personal items, a coffee mug that read World's Okayest Grant Writer, a gag gift from my former assistant, a succulent plant that had somehow survived the office's hostile environment, and a photo of my cat, Mr. Whiskers, looking judgmental in a tiny bow tie. The autumn air bit at my cheeks as I loaded the box into my Honda Civic, a car so unremarkable it could blend into witness protection. But as I sat behind the steering wheel, watching students walk across campus with the carefree stride of people whose biggest worry was whether the dining hall was serving pizza or mystery meat, something crystallized in my mind. They thought they were cutting costs. They thought I was expendable, just another line item to be erased from the budget spreadsheet. They had no idea they'd just fired the only person standing between them and financial catastrophe. I drove home to my apartment, a modest one-bedroom that I'd furnished with the careful budgeting skills that made me excellent at managing grant funds. My laptop sat on the kitchen table, innocent as a sleeping cat. I opened it and navigated to the shared drive where the Whitmore Foundation application lived. Still there. Still incomplete. Still requiring my credentials and digital signature. I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for, Dr. Miranda Chen, Development Director at Riverside University. We'd served together on several grant review committees, and she had the sharp intelligence of someone who could spot opportunity from 3 counties away. Miranda? It's Catherine Walsh. I have a proposition for you. The next morning, I woke up feeling like a chess grandmaster who'd just realized their opponent had been playing checkers the entire time. My phone had been buzzing since dawn, not with condolences about my termination, but with excitement from Riverside University's administration. Miranda had moved fast. By 7 a.m., I had a formal job offer as Senior Grant Development Specialist, complete with a salary that made my previous paycheck look like lunch money and benefits that actually covered things like dental work and mental health. By 8 a.m., I had access to Riverside's grant system and was already reviewing their current applications. The contrast was immediate and stark. Where my former workplace had systems held together with digital duct tape and prayers, Riverside operated with the smooth efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Their grant database actually worked. Their computers didn't freeze when you opened more than 3 applications. Their printers didn't require ritual sacrifice to produce legible documents. But the real difference was in the attitude. At my old job, grant writing was viewed as a necessary evil, like filing taxes or getting root canals. Here, it was recognized as the lifeblood of academic research, the difference between ambitious dreams and funded reality. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in Riverside's sparkling conference room, the kind of room that actually had working climate control and chairs that didn't require a tetanus shot, listening to Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Riverside's president, outline their vision for expansion. The woman had the kind of sharp intelligence that cut through bureaucratic nonsense like a laser through tissue paper, and when she spoke about academic excellence, you believed she actually meant it. We've been trying to secure major funding for our new research initiative, she explained, her voice carrying the kind of genuine enthusiasm that Whitmore reserved for budget cuts. Our faculty has groundbreaking projects in biomedical research, sustainable technology, and social innovation. But we haven't had much success with the larger foundations. As she spoke, I realized I was looking at everything my former institution could have been if it had been run by someone who understood that universities exist to advance human knowledge, not just to maintain impressive-looking buildings and administrative hierarchies. The challenge, Dr. Hoffman continued, pulling up a presentation that actually worked on the first try, is that we're competing against institutions with longer grant-writing track records. Foundations tend to fund familiar names. I watched her navigate through slides showing Riverside's research potential, genuine innovation happening in labs where faculty actually had adequate resources and support staff who understood their jobs. The contrast with my former workplace was like comparing a Formula One race car to a shopping cart with a wobbly wheel. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like a poker player holding a royal flush. Tell me about the Whitmore Foundation grant. Have you ever applied? The room went quiet. Dr. Hoffman exchanged glances with Miranda, who was already grinning like someone who'd just solved a particularly satisfying crossword puzzle. We looked into it, Dr. Hoffman admitted. But the application process is notoriously complex. The success rate is less than 5%, and they only fund one institution per cycle. What if I told you, I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat, that I could guarantee your application would be not just competitive, but exemplary? I spent the rest of the morning transferring everything, every piece of research, every carefully crafted narrative, every budget line item I developed for my former employer. The application that would have positioned Whitmore University as a leader in innovative research was now being retooled to showcase Riverside's potential. It was like watching a house being moved brick by brick, except each brick was a piece of evidence that Riverside University was the superior choice for funding. The irony was delicious. The Whitmore Foundation grant, named after President Whitmore's own grandfather, was about to be awarded to his institution's biggest rival, using an application crafted by the woman he'd just fired to cut costs. By noon, I was putting finishing touches on budget projections that would make accountants weep with joy. By 2 p.m., I was crafting the executive summary that would serve as Riverside's introduction to $12 million in funding. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is about to get good, then you understand the sweet satisfaction of watching incompetence meet its match. Every click of my keyboard was another nail in the coffin of my former employer's financial security. Subscribe if you want to see more stories of underdogs using their brains to outmaneuver the bureaucrats who underestimate them. Meanwhile, back at my former workplace, the chaos was beginning to unfold like a slow-motion disaster movie. I knew this because Janet from accounting, who'd always been friendly and had refused to treat me like office furniture, texted me around 3 p.m. "Catherine, they're panicking about the Whitmore grant. Nobody knows where the application materials are, and the deadline is tomorrow. President Whitmore is asking if you might consider consulting on it." Grimacing face. I stared at the message, feeling the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for watching a perfect parallel parking job. Consulting. After firing me to cut costs, they wanted to pay me consulting fees to complete the work I'd already been doing as their employee. I texted back, "Unfortunately, I'm no longer available for consulting. But I'm sure the existing staff will figure it out." Smiling face with smiling eyes. The emoji was crucial. It conveyed just the right amount of polite malice. At 4 p.m., I submitted Riverside University's application to the Whitmore Foundation. Every section was polished to mirror brightness. Every argument was airtight. Every budget line was justified with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. It was, without false modesty, the kind of application that grant reviewers dream about finding in their inbox. The confirmation email arrived 30 seconds later, followed immediately by a call from Dr. Hoffman. "Catherine, I just wanted to personally thank you. This application is extraordinary. I've never seen anything quite like it. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. I believe in doing thorough work. How long do you think before we hear back from the foundation?" I glanced at my calendar, mentally calculating review timelines and committee meeting schedules. Foundation decisions usually take 4 to 6 weeks, but given the quality of our submission and the current funding cycle, I'd expect to hear something within 3 weeks. What I didn't mention was that I'd also crafted the application to address every single criterion the Whitmore Foundation prioritized, using insider knowledge from my years of successful applications to their various programs. I knew their review committee's composition, their scoring rubrics, and the specific language that made their board members' eyes light up with funding fever. More importantly, I understood something that my former colleagues never grasped: grant applications aren't just requests for money. They're persuasive narratives that transform institutional dreams into fundable realities. Every sentence needs to serve a purpose, every paragraph needs to build toward the inevitable conclusion that funding this project isn't just smart, it's essential. The Whitmore application I'd been developing for my former employer had been good. Very good. But the one I was now crafting for Riverside was transcendent. It was the difference between a competent cover letter and a love song that makes you believe in destiny. I spent the afternoon fine-tuning budget narratives that read like poetry and crafting program descriptions that would make foundation reviewers want to fund the project just to be part of something magnificent. By evening, I had created what could only be described as the Sistine Chapel of grant applications. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the nice Italian restaurant downtown, the one with actual cloth napkins and servers who didn't look like they'd rather be anywhere else. I ordered wine that cost more than my usual grocery budget and raised a toast to Mr. Whiskers, who was waiting at home with the kind of patience only cats possess. The restaurant buzzed with the comfortable chatter of people enjoying their Friday evening, completely unaware that a few miles away, a small academic earthquake was about to reshape the local university landscape. I savored my osso buco while mentally reviewing the day's work, feeling the deep satisfaction of a craftsperson who'd just completed a masterpiece. To strategic thinking, I murmured, watching the burgundy liquid catch the restaurant's warm lighting. And to the beautiful simplicity of consequences. As I walked to my car, I reflected on the day's irony. 24 hours ago, I'd been considered expendable overhead. Tonight, I was the architect of what would become the most successful grant application in Riverside University's history. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of timing as exquisite as a Swiss chronometer. The next morning brought another text from Janet. They missed the deadline. President Whitmore had to call the foundation to beg for an extension. They got until 5 p.m. today, but apparently the application is incomplete and nobody understands your notes. It's chaos here. Flushed face. I was sitting in Riverside's faculty lounge, enjoying coffee that didn't taste like it had been filtered through a gym sock, when I received this update. The faculty lounge, by the way, was an actual lounge, with comfortable furniture, natural lighting, and snacks that hadn't expired during the previous semester. The mental image of President Whitmore pleading with foundation staff for more time was almost too delicious to bear. I could picture him in his renovated office, probably wearing his serious administrator face while internally panicking about the financial implications of losing $12 million in funding. But the real beauty was in the details Janet had shared. They couldn't understand my notes because my notes were written for someone who understood grant architecture. Without that foundation knowledge, trying to complete my application was like attempting to perform surgery using a cookbook written in a foreign language. Around noon, I received another update. They brought in 3 people from other departments to help finish the application. None of them have grant experience. Dr. Peterson from English is trying to write the budget narrative. Grinning face with sweat skull. Dr. Peterson. The same Dr. Peterson who once asked me if indirect costs meant the expenses they hadn't thought of yet. The man who believed peer review was when your colleagues checked your parking permit. He was now responsible for justifying a $12 million budget to one of the most prestigious foundations in the country. If this were a movie, the audience would be shouting at the screen. At 3 p.m., Miranda knocked on my new office door. "Catherine? The Whitmore Foundation just called. They wanted to confirm some details about our application." My heart did a little victory dance. What kind of details? Timeline questions, budget clarifications, the kind of follow-up questions they only ask when they're seriously considering funding. I nodded, maintaining professional composure while internally doing cartwheels. Follow-up questions 3 weeks ahead of schedule meant our application had moved to the top of their review pile. At 5:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a final text from Janet. They submitted something, but President Whitmore looked like he was going to be sick when he came out of his office. Word is the application was missing entire sections and the budget didn't add up. Grimacing face skull. I stared at the message, feeling the deep satisfaction of a puzzle finally clicking into place. They'd submitted an incomplete application because they had no idea how complex the process actually was. In their minds, grant writing was just filling out forms, like applying for a library card or renewing a driver's license. They'd learned too late that grant applications are more like architectural blueprints. Every line matters, every detail is connected, and you can't just wing it when you're asking for $12 million. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Dr. Hoffman's office when the call came. She answered on speakerphone, and I watched her face transform as the Whitmore Foundation representative delivered the news. "Dr. Hoffman, I'm pleased to inform you that Riverside University has been selected to receive the Whitmore Foundation grant. $12 million over 4 years, beginning immediately." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens when people are trying to process unexpected joy. Dr. Hoffman's eyes found mine across the desk, and I saw recognition there, the understanding that this wasn't luck, wasn't coincidence, but the direct result of careful planning and precise execution. "If I may," the foundation representative continued, "I wanted to mention that this was one of the most impressive applications our review committee has seen in recent years. The quality of writing, the thoroughness of the research plan, and the clarity of the budget narrative were exemplary." I felt a warm glow of professional pride. In the grant writing world, that kind of feedback was like receiving a standing ovation at Carnegie Hall. "We received 43 applications for this cycle," the representative added, "but your submission stood out immediately." The committee was particularly impressed by the innovative approach to interdisciplinary collaboration. After she hung up, we sat in that golden silence for a moment longer. Dr. Hoffman was processing what I already knew, that Riverside had just leapfrogged into the top tier of research institutions, and it had happened because they'd recognized talent when they saw it. After she hung up, we sat in that golden silence for a moment longer. Then Dr. Hoffman leaned back in her chair and started laughing, not the polite chuckle of academic decorum, but the deep, genuine laughter of someone who'd just witnessed poetic justice in action. "Catherine," she said when she finally caught her breath, "I have a feeling you have a story to tell me." So I told her. Everything. The budget cuts, the termination, the incomplete application sitting in my former employer's system, and the beautiful simplicity of bringing my expertise to an institution that actually valued it. Dr. Hoffman listened with the focus of someone hearing a masterclass in strategic thinking. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "What happens to them now?" she asked. I shrugged, feeling lighter than I had in months. "They'll survive. They'll find other funding sources, make more budget cuts, maybe learn to appreciate the people who actually understand how to keep the lights on. but they won't get the Whitmore grant. And more importantly, they'll never quite understand why. That afternoon, the university sent out a press release announcing the largest single grant in Riverside's history. The local newspaper picked up the story, running it with a photo of Dr. Hoffman and the entire development team, including their newest member, looking professional in a blazer that hadn't come from the clearance rack. I imagine President Whitmore read that story, probably while sitting in his renovated office, wondering how his biggest competitor had managed to secure the very grant his institution had been counting on. I imagine he asked his remaining staff what went wrong with their application, and I imagine they gave him answers that satisfied no one. But what I know he'll never understand is the elegant simplicity of cause and effect. Fire the person who wrote your applications, and you lose the ability to write applications. Treat your most valuable employees as expendable, and discover just how valuable they really were. The best part? 3 days after the announcement, I received an email from President Whitmore's assistant, asking if I'd be interested in returning as a senior consultant to help with future grant applications. I deleted the email without responding. Some lessons are best learned in silence. 6 months later, I'm settled into my new role at Riverside, working with a team that understands the difference between cutting costs and cutting corners. My office has a window that actually opens, a coffee machine that doesn't require percussive maintenance, and colleagues who view grant writing as the skilled profession it is rather than glorified secretarial work. Mr. Whiskers approved of the career change too, mostly because my improved salary meant upgrades to his food budget and a new cat tree that resembles a small luxury condo. But the real satisfaction isn't the better job or the higher salary or even the $12 million we brought to Riverside. It's the knowledge that competence, when properly applied, is the most devastating weapon against institutional stupidity. President Whitmore thought he was making a smart financial decision when he eliminated my position. In reality, he was making the kind of strategic error that business schools will probably use as a case study in how not to manage human resources. They wanted to cut costs, so they cut the person who brought in revenue. They wanted to eliminate dead weight, so they eliminated their most productive employee. They wanted to streamline operations, so they removed the person who understood how the machine actually worked. The universe has a sense of humor, but it's the kind of dry, ironic humor that requires patience to fully appreciate. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or explosive arguments. Sometimes it's simply being excellent at what you do and letting incompetence reveal itself naturally. As I write this, Riverside University is in the planning stages for our new research facility, funded by the Whitmore Grant. We're hiring new faculty, expanding programs, and building something that will benefit students for generations. Meanwhile, my former employer is still figuring out why their grant success rate dropped to 0 after my departure. I hear they hired a consulting firm to optimize their development processes. The consulting firm's first recommendation was to hire a qualified grant writer. They're looking for someone with my exact qualifications. The irony is so perfect it's almost poetry. Thanks for sticking with this story, you brilliant rebels who understand that the best victories are won with brains, not volume. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in the power of strategic thinking over corporate chaos. Unless you're President Whitmore, in which case, you might want to focus on reading your employees' job descriptions before deciding who's expendable. Remember, respect your grant writers. We're the ones keeping your lights on, and we remember everything.